Hey guys, this is Brian with Inspiring How You See That. We're the channel that talks about all different kinds of music and entertainment, and we interview some of your favorite artists. So if that sounds good, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you'll keep up with everything that we're doing. And as you guys remember, we've done a few salute to service interviews. And you'll remember a little bit ago I had my brother Ray, and today I have another special guest, my other brother Mark. Mark, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, glad to be here.
Absolutely. And you are now actually currently in the National Guard.
I am, yeah.
And
Pennsylvania Army National Guard. I'm a Sergeant First Class, E7.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And you started right out of high school and then went back into the Guard, correct?
I did. I joined in '88, my junior year of high school. Went infantry at the time, 11 Charlie Mortars. I did my first 6-year enlistment as that, and then got out for 13 years. So went back in 2007. Changed from 11 Charlie Mortars to 35 Foxtrot Intel Analyst, and have been doing that ever since.
So what made you want to go back in the second time?
At the time, that was a few years after 9/11, so that was always way in the back. I had missed the opportunity to serve. I always had a good time with the other soldiers and just the pride of putting the uniform on. There were some other things going on with the family. We were looking at possible career changes. My wife was. And so this was an opportunity to go back in to get the financial benefits of the military to enable her to go through some career changes, and it worked out well.
Sure. Now you mentioned when you first went in, you were a mortarman, and
Right.
now you're involved with intelligence. So obviously those are two completely different MOSs. What made you want to make that change?
Two things. One, going into Intel, the security clearance was involved because that carries with it a top secret security clearance.
Okay.
That for me, I saw was going to be more valuable for potential career changes for myself. And secondly, infantry, which mortars is, that's more, in layman's terms, that's a young man's game. So,
Okay.
when you look at the physical demand of infantry, even in mortars, just back then, everything wasn't motorized. So we still
Sure.
had to lift up the weapon systems, stuff like that. And I thought, I'm too old for that. I'm going to look at
So you were getting
career.
too old and weak?
Well, I was getting too old for that. But yeah, those are the two main reasons. And at the time, when you first go in and you talk to a recruiter and they tell you what all the possible MOSs or job skills that are available to you, I knew what some of them were from my time in the infantry, but I didn't know I didn't know what the intel was going to be. So, of course, from watching movies, I thought, so what you're saying is I'm going to be like Jason Bourne or something, which I'm not. None of us are. So it's not as romantic as they portray it to be, but it's still a great job. And I've had 4 deployments, 3 with the military and 1 as a contractor, all in the intel field and deployed. It's a great field to be in. It's a great
Sure.
job.
Sure. And I know there's probably a lot that you can't divulge, but what can you tell us about, say, what the average day would be when you're deployed as an intel officer?
Well, I'm not an officer.
Okay.
I'm an intel sergeant. The average day, just generally speaking, for most soldiers outside of infantry or those frontline soldiers that are always going outside the wire, the majority of the time when you're deployed, you characterize as being boring.
Okay.
But I think everybody would admit freely that that's a lot better than what the alternative is.
Sure.
On the intel side of the house, we're mainly concerned with what the enemy is doing. So, who the enemy is, what they're doing, what their capabilities are, and then you try to determine or forecast what the enemy could potentially do in the future.
Okay.
And once you make those assessments, then you advise the commander, because then the commander has to make decisions on what friendly forces are going to do. What the U.S. forces are
Gotcha.
going to do, because he wants to be as successful as possible, but yet still keeping all the soldiers, airmen, Marines, and everybody safe. You don't want to put them in unnecessary risk. So, really, from an intel standpoint, that's our job: is to advise the commander on where the enemy is, who they are, what their capabilities are, and what they're going to do. And then the commander can decide either, well, let's go target the enemy to remove them so they're no longer a threat, potentially to let's just avoid the enemy, which, a lot of times is a good course of action to
Sure.
take, depending on what the mission is. So really, that's what we do on the intel side of the house.
Okay, so is it fair to say that your main goal is to get the information that can help U.S. soldiers stay alive and do what they need to do?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, whether that means avoiding the enemy or targeting the enemy, it's to keep the soldiers safe, and also so you have a successful mission,
Sure.
whatever that mission might be.
Sure. So you spent multiple years, as you said, overseas, in war zones, for lack of a better term. How tough was that not being with your daughters, with your wife, with your family? How tough was that on you personally?
Yeah, that's extremely difficult, as it is for all military members who are deployed. But the way I always looked at it was, I knew what I was doing every day. We watch the media back home, and it's all doom and gloom. And so if it's like, hey, I'm deploying to Iraq or I'm deploying to Afghanistan, oh my gosh, you're going to be shot at every day, and that's not the case.
Right.
It is probably for some. It wasn't my experience. So for me, I knew what I was doing every day, and like I had said previously, the majority of all my days were boring, but that's better than the alternative again.
Sure.
It's more difficult, I think, for the family members back home because they don't know what we're doing every day, and they're still watching that nightly news or that 24-hour news, and they're just getting inundated with all this doom and gloom,
Yeah.
and all the sensationalized reports, and
And they're scared.
and they're scared. They're scared. They're uncertain about what's going on. And again, they don't know what we're doing at any given moment of any given day. It's a lot of powerlessness that they feel, I'm sure. And so I always thought that the real heroes are the family members back home that are still not only doing what, like for my wife, not only is she doing what she did while I was home, but now she has picked up that whole other
Sure.
range of responsibilities. She's doing 100% of the workload back here at the home with the kids, with the house, and just everything. And that's the family members are the real heroes of the military.
Sure. Now that you're still in the National Guard, but obviously you're back home, or you have been for a while. So you're back now. You're back in civilian life, even though you're still in the National Guard.
Right.
So you're working your normal job, but you're still involved, and I'm assuming you're doing the 1 weekend a month. What is that like now, kind of, you're in the Guard, but you're not overseas. You're not 100% involved in that.
That's a good question. I think for most of us, when we are deployed and we're overseas, that's when we're actually doing the job that we signed up to do.
Sure.
Being in the National Guard, it's unique, just like the reserves, because we're really only meeting that 1 weekend a month. So we'd like to do a lot of training in our specific jobs, but a lot of times that's difficult because there's a lot of requirements throughout the year that every soldier and every unit has to accomplish, whether it's the physical fitness tests or medical events or the countless briefings that you have to receive that are required of every unit throughout the year. A lot of our time is filled up with that. And in addition, you can imagine if we only show up to work once a month, we have a lot of equipment. Every unit has a lot of equipment that just sits idle every month throughout the month.
Okay.
So a lot of our time is spent conducting preventative maintenance on all this equipment and stuff. Just turn around and do it the next month again.
In case it's needed.
In case it's needed. And that's the big thing. Our job in the reserves and the National Guard is to be ready to respond when needed. And that includes not only our skill set, our physical stature, our mental health, but also all the equipment, weapon systems, everything that we have. Everything needs to be ready. So if that notice comes down, everything gets shipped somewhere overseas.
Sure.
And as soon as you pull it out, it's got to be ready to work in order to complete the mission. So a lot of times that's what a lot of our time is spent doing, just making sure everything's ready.
Sure. Now, and I asked Ray some of these same questions, that what you've learned in the military as far as leadership, as far as growing as an individual, how has that helped you in your civilian life, both jobs and with your family? And
Yeah, definitely a commitment to mission, and there's so many facets of that. One is, in the military, you have to work with a lot of individuals and a lot of different individuals. You need to learn how to work efficiently and effectively with them, with everybody as a team, because what's most important is that mission. Okay. You really need to leave your ego at the door. You come in, you join the team, you receive that mission, and that becomes the whole team's focus. And we're just one component of that team. Transferring over to the civilian world, that's a big difference too, because a lot of times in the civilian world, and it's not wrong, but we're focused on how can I succeed? How can I benefit financially, or how can my career benefit? What kind of things can I do specifically to benefit me? There is a little bit of that in the military, because we're always looking at how can I achieve that next rank.
Sure.
But in the military, how I achieve that next rank usually correlates with how did I improve the overall effectiveness of my team. So by able to take in that skill set to my civilian employer or my civilian job, I think has made me a much more effective worker in no matter what job I have.
Nice. And, as we've mentioned before, we're a military family. Dad served, Ray served, you have, and now are serving.
Yeah, and that played a big role in when I joined my junior year of high school. It was something that was the norm for our family, and not that everybody did in our family, but we have a family that if you come out and you say, hey, I'm thinking about joining the military, that's a great option.
Exactly.
It's not the only option, but that's an excellent option. The family is there to support you in that decision, whether you choose that route or not. A lot of families don't have that support. A lot of families don't have that view of the military. Our family did. And like for me personally, with 2 daughters, I would be supportive also. But on the flip side, it's like, listen, I've had 4 deployments, like I said earlier, 3 with the military, 1 as a contractor. I do not require my children to join the military. If that's something they're interested, I'll support them. If they're not interested in it for whatever reason, I'll support that decision.
Sure.
Too.
Absolutely. What does it mean to you to be, you're not a veteran yet because you're still in, but to know that you're part of that, was it, I think, 2 or 3% of the population that serves?
Yeah, I think it's even less than that. And when you look at the percentage of people that even deploy and support it. First of all, it'd be great if nobody deployed.
Sure.
It'd be great if there were no wars and we wouldn't have to worry about that. But unfortunately, we live in a world that's not yet willing to accept that type of peace. And so we find ourselves in situations where it's a necessary evil. But if you have 1% of the people join the military, volunteer to join the military in the United States, and a lower portion of them actually deploys, it's an honor. It's an honor to be able to serve, and service is important. Whether you choose the military or another route, I think it's important for everybody to look at their life and say, what can I do to provide a service to my community or to my country? Military is just an easy way to do it. You go to the recruiter, you sign up if that's something you're willing to do. But there's so many other options and alternatives that people can do, to provide a service to our community. And so that's also an honor. And one of the reasons why I'm still in the military, because I enjoy doing that. And I think it's my duty to provide that service to the country or the community.
So, Mark, we're coming towards the end of the interview, and I want to thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you.
And, if we're not talking about your 2 daughters, if another young person, a man or woman, came to you and they're thinking, hey, I'm thinking about joining the military, what kind of advice would you give them?
The first thing I'd want to do is to find out why they're considering it. What's their motivation? What's their goal? What's their end state? By joining the military, what do they think or what do they expect they're going to get out of it? Because it's not something that you take lightly.
Right.
I think all of us in the military have seen people join for the wrong reasons, and it's been a very unsuccessful experience for them. Okay, so for this young individual that's asking for advice or looking for a little bit of guidance or mentorship, what their intent is the first thing we need to determine. If it's based on service, or even if it's based on, hey, I want to improve my my quality of life, and I know the military is an opportunity for me to do that. Then we can do some research, look at other jobs that are available in the military, find out what kind of piques their interest. There's different branches. We all do things differently. We all
Sure.
live differently. I joined the Army. I love the Army, but after I came back in 2007, like the day after, it's like, why did I not go talk to an Air Force recruiter? Because it's like,
Better barrack there.
especially when you're deployed and you look how soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines are all living and doing things on a daily basis. It's kind of like we've got MREs that we're eating in one place, and the Air Force is over there with a grill. They're grilling up steaks, and the Marines over here digging in the dirt to get worms to eat, So, but for some people, that's their motivation. They
Sure.
thrive on that. And I was like, I don't want to live, with the grill and with the steak. I want to be a little bit more hardcore, and that's great. And there's other people it's like, I'll take the grilled steak every day, and that's great too. But really, find out what their motivation is, what their interests are, what their future interests are, because there's a lot of benefits. There's so many benefits available to members of the military. Money for schooling.
Mm-hmm.
For these young guys and girls or young people contemplating the military, but looking beyond that, looking at their civilian education and future career and profession. The benefits are there. And when you enlist, you got to do it smartly. You have to be intelligent about it. You have to be aware. You can't go in ignorant, not knowing
Right.
what benefits are available, because you need to make sure that you get those all in your contract. And the benefits are out there, the fantastic benefits that are available for only members of the military,
Sure.
at least right now, for only members of the military. And then make sure that young individual incorporates all of that into the decision they're finally going to make. Because once you sign that dotted line, you're on the hook for that contract.
Sure.
You can't go to basic training in AIT and then get stationed somewhere and then 6 months later be like, you know what, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. I want to do something else. That's not how it works. It's too bad. It's not how it works. So being educated and informed as best you can before you go in, and making sure you're doing the right thing for you, making sure you're going into the right career field that suits your interests, is going to be able to make you a lot more successful in the military. So if somebody was coming to me looking for advice or mentorship, that's what I would help them do.
Sure. Now, are there any resources that maybe online, that if they're thinking that they could do a little research and come in better prepared?
There are a lot of sites online. I always recommend, the best thing to do is go talk to people that have walked the walk.
Okay.
Just like anything, you go online and you're going to get a one-sided picture.
You're going to get the best, yeah.
You're going to get hey, you want to be an intel analyst? You want to be just like Jason Bourne, right? Come talk to somebody that's done it. Say, it's not Jason Bourne. It's sitting at a computer a lot of times, but there's also air conditioning. And if you like air conditioning, this is a good job for you, If you want to be out there and you want to be pounding dirt and chewing sand, an intel analyst might not be the job for you. There's other career fields out there.
Excellent.
Yeah, so talk to somebody who's walked the walk.
Sure.
Is the best advice I could give.
Makes sense. And looking back, and I wouldn't say regret, but is there anything that if you could, you would change as far as your military career?
I've enjoyed, generally speaking, the deployments that I've had. Let's see, 2 of them I volunteered for, and then the other deployment where I was a contractor, it was kind of like volunteering for also.
Sure.
It was a job that came up, so I applied and I got it, volunteered for it. I enjoyed those opportunities, but there's a lot of time, a lot of sacrifice of time that's made with your family.
Mm-hmm.
Like with my family, where I wasn't there to support my wife in times of need. I wasn't there to support my 2 daughters, maybe when they needed it during that time. And it's extremely difficult to do over, nowadays we have FaceTime and Zoom and all that. But like my first appointment back in 2007, we didn't have that.
Right.
You had to find a landline phone, call a special number that a switchboard operator would then put you through to a phone number to call home. So there was a lot of sacrifices there, a lot of responsibilities as a father and husband that weren't fulfilled during those times when I was deployed. Fortunately for me, I have a very supportive, very strong wife that was able to carry on and get through all those things with not only struggles she was facing, but also struggles that my daughters were facing. So that's probably the biggest regret, although it's difficult in hindsight to say if I would have done it differently.
Sure.
Because again, there was a lot of benefits that as a family we now have because of those deployments that we wouldn't have if I hadn't have deployed so many times. So it's, a crystal ball, magic wand, whatever it is, you can never tell how things would have been different if you would have done things differently.
Sure.
Things turned out very well for us the way things did go. So based on that, I would probably do it the same way again, just try to communicate more often than I did, I think, to try and alleviate some of the struggles that they were having while I was gone.
Sure. Yeah. Mark, thank you again for this time. I really appreciate it.
It's good.
And before we go, is there anything else that you'd like to say to viewers?
Just, what, I think for a lot of soldiers, we appreciate it. Sometimes understand for us, veterans or currently serving, it's not always comfortable when somebody comes up and says, thank you for your service. Although it's not comfortable, we appreciate and we're thankful of each and every individual that does that. So please don't stop doing that. And, we do appreciate the recognition of the service that we provide. And a lot of times it's just the best response is thank you. Or a lot of times I'll say, well, it's been an honor. And for the people who have a negative view of the military, and don't appreciate the things that we do, I say the same thing, you're welcome. Because if it wasn't for the military, there's a good chance you wouldn't have that right or that liberty to express those views without the military. So although you might not appreciate it, you're welcome.
Excellent. We want to echo that. And we want to thank all of you who have served and are serving. Like you said, we wouldn't have the freedom. We wouldn't be able to do this. We wouldn't be able to have any of the rights and freedoms that we enjoy if not for our fighting men and women. So to those of you out there, we love you. We thank you so much. If you or a loved one have been or are currently in the military, let us know your stories. We'd love to share that with everyone. So as always, thank you so much. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. We love you all. God bless and rock on.